Hey guys, my name's Gentile. For the last decade or so, I've been playing acoustic in some way, shape, or form. In this video, we're gonna go over a strumming technique and finger picking technique. Now in part two, I'm gonna go over how to apply these and situationally, when to actually use these. To get part two, click on the link below, enter in your email, and we'll send that over to you. All right, let's get started. All right, strumming. Now, we all have that sore spot of just being in the background or in the foreground, being turned up or turned down. But either way, just for probably like the next 2 hours, over and over and over and over and over and over again. Where do you go? Well, truthfully, you can't go anywhere from there. Think of strumming as like, that's your final, right? That's as big as you can actually get. So to start off really strong sounds great in certain circumstances, but it does kind of cap you at the dynamic range of where you can go. So if we're going to be strumming, I want to show you different approaches that I do to make sure that if the whole song I'm strumming, I have many different avenues to offer different dynamics to the worship leader, or to offer a different dynamic or an affirmation to the drummer. Sometimes when we play the acoustic, when I'm strumming, it's me going to another band member like, yeah, keep going. That's a great idea. And sometimes I'll emulate that by actually playing exactly what they're playing. Now, before we get into this, the way that I approach strumming, I look at it like a grid. So instead of thinking of the strum pattern verbatim, bum, down, ga, 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 you know, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, whatever. That stuff is way too confusing, and it's just not, it's not a natural feeling. So I put everything onto a grid in my head. For the most part, everything that we're playing worship-wise can be subdivided up to a 16th note. And what I mean by that is if we're playing 1, 2, 3, say I'm just playing quarter notes, right? Your 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 16th notes would be double that. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Now, that pattern, that technique, so to speak, never leaves me. No matter what I'm doing, I'm always thinking of 16s. I'm putting this on that grid in my head so that no matter what we do, if I want to do that, I know I'm going to be in time because I'm counting all of the subdivisions in between. And so I'm not going to be floating in time. There's nothing worse than, as a drummer as well, playing drums and having the acoustic player float all over the place. It's constantly pulling and pushing the band. So to stay out of that kind of fluid tempo, what I like to do is I like to put the metronome into my strum arm. And just no matter what I'm playing, I'm always thinking of 16s. So you can virtually do any pattern that you want to do now, just subdividing into 16s. And then we're just thinking about taking stuff out or accenting. So if I'm doing even distributions, sometimes that works. Like say we would do like, sometimes that works really well, and that's exactly what needs to be played. But sometimes we want more of like a pulse in it, right? So maybe it's a... Now notice when I'm back here a little bit, you get a little more of a focus sound. If I were to go all the way back, it gets really brittle. Notice how it starts warming up. It gets really warm the closer I get to the neck. But what I like to do is play right behind the sound hole. And instead of going straight down, I go a little bit on an angle. Whatever would be your natural like swing arm. So most of the time I'm right back here, and you can kind of tell It's almost as if you have like a filter knob. So playing right back here gives me the most ability to be focused and responsive when it comes to strumming. That will literally be like your grid work, pun intended, for everything that you want to do strum-wise. Just get groove out of your head as far as focusing on how to do it, and implement grid instead. Because then when you put the groove over top of the grid, now you have just infinite possibilities. And I could play, you could play that fast, you can play, now notice my hand is still pulsing like at 16s. In my arm, it's still this, over and over and over and over again. So that's pretty much the only thing that you need to know when it comes to strumming. Now let's go over finger picking. One of the first things that I ever learned was to use these 3 fingers. So you have your thumb, 1 and 2. Now down the road I incorporated 3 and 4, but thumb 1, 2, 3, 4 are gonna be how we're gonna be referencing the finger picking technique. For right now, we're just gonna use these 3. And the technique is literally just alternating. So it's gonna be thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2. We'll use the G shape, we'll skip the A string, and we'll go right to that note. Now every time I'm hitting the thumb, I'm alternating the next note with either my index or my middle finger. It'll sound like this. Now, when I change, say I go to move my middle finger on my left hand to the C, I would just move my thumb on my right hand to that bass note while still keeping everything the same. If I want to go so that technique works wonderfully when all of your chord transitions or all your chord changes are happening on downbeats. If you want to add something a little more and incorporate the rest of the strings on the guitar, that's when I would start to add your ring finger and your pinky. Now, you can use these for almost like a claw if you wanted to say, grab the whole thing at the same time, you know. If you wanted to keep those 3 fingers and just add more, you would do the exact same thing that I'd done before, but you just go all the way down. So thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 3. And if you wanted a thumb 4, I probably don't ever do that. Now you notice following this technique doesn't necessarily make it easy to be on grid. So what I do is I actually double these guys. Thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2, thumb 1, thumb 2. And then I'll throw in my ring finger every other. So real simple, but it keeps that same original technique with just a little bit of a splash at the end. So carrying this out further, you can take just these 3 fingers and move these 2 fingers based on what you need to grab, and it'll open up a lot more possibilities, all while keeping this on whatever the bass note is. For example, there's a song that uses this kind of melody line in the intro to it. So really, these like 3 fingers, they can take care of a wide spread of different finger picking techniques. You can start to incorporate more fingers along the way, but really the whole technique is just referring and going back to that thumb. Whatever finger you use in between is kind of up to you. Whatever finger most of the time you're going to use is going to be the one that can grab that available note. So if I'm like, still just using these 3, but now separating the space in between them. It can get a little difficult, and sometimes it can feel like you're missing your spot, but I would say try this alternating thumb 1, thumb 2 before you move on to anything else, because you'll find that that'll probably take care of the majority of finger picking that you want. Another technique that I'll do is I'll actually alternate groupings of 2 when I'm plucking. So for example, say I'm playing this A major chord, right? If I do, that's beautiful. If I wanted to have kind of more like, almost like I was playing piano instead of guitar, I would take it from like this kind of approach. So you have a little bit different feel. It kind of can stay a little more airy. I'm thinking more almost like how a piano player would approach like an arpeggiated section. But this is fun. It's a little weird to get used to, but the picking technique is thumb 1 and then thumb and 2. So thumb and 1, thumb and 2, and then 1 and 3. So thumb 1, thumb 2, 1 and 3, thumb and 2. Any place. Any of those kind of like techniques that add more of a texture is something that I would normally gravitate towards when it comes to a band setting. Because if you got a bunch of people playing arpeggiated stuff and I'm over here doing like, it's a lot of notes. So when I want to kind of fit in, I'll kind of play something along this line. Anyway, experiment with these, mess around with them. Now in part 2, I'm gonna go over how to apply these and situationally when to actually use these. To get part 2, click the link below, enter in your email, and we'll send that right over to you. I'll see you there.